All right, guys, welcome to episode 2 Auto Dealer Live. I'm David Villa.
I'm Mikey Oquendo.
We got a great show for you. 2 outstanding guests. You're going to love it. Check this out. All right, so we have Grant Hocking, General Manager of Volkswagen of Tampa Bay, and Mike Svoboda, the General Manager of Buchanan Auto Park and Buchanan Automotive. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We launched our first reboot episode earlier this month and had great feedback from it. Matter of fact, I want to just start by just kind of tagging on to something that went a little crazy in a positive way with discussion. I had a text message that came through shortly before we're jumping on this recording from a platform director of 5 Nissan stores. And he didn't listen to the show until after one of his general managers texted him the show, said, "This is spot on." Didn't know that he knew me. Said, "Hey, this is spot on from income to vehicle acquisition and training." That's what he said, and he was sending the show from last time. We talked to Matt and John about that, and I just wanted to get your take on some of the transitions really quick before we go a different direction. But with regards to vehicle acquisition, with regards to the changes there, with regards to training our people to view it differently, I wanted to ask your take on that. Mike, I'll jump to you first. Look, I know you've done things a little differently, but with the vehicle acquisition, the changes up and down, fluctuation, inventory, not around, then a deal. John last week said, "Hey, we had to ask Volkswagen to slow down a little bit so we don't go back the other way." Also from training people that were making some money, had a little bit of an easier time selling cars, to now we're back to really having to kind of view it differently and get our people's mind right. Kind of touch on that a little bit, because I think it's really something that dealers are really searching for some answers on. What have you done? What have you found when it comes to those topics that you can help other dealers, kind of maybe solve some of this?
Yeah, so we've done things a little unique here in Waynesboro. Even pre-COVID, we've never paid our salespeople on the gross of the deal. We've paid them on volume, and we've done things to improve volume through the shortage. So our people were able to still hit their personal, professional, financial goals and drive to that. But we really focused on turn and earn. So it's one of those things, what's the best time to plant a tree? Well, that was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. So we might as well, yes, I'm talking what we did historically, but if you didn't do it, there's no better time than now to start. If I was going in and starting with a store that didn't do what we did, I would start implementing some of these strategies. And the strategy is really playing the factory turn game, because in our area, at least in the Chevy and the Chrysler world, there's still a lot of dealers that could not sell as many cars. We're the number 1 Chevy store in the state right now, and nobody can come close to us because they don't have the cars to do it. Even though inventory is out there, it's spotty on model lines, and those that have continued to earn inventory, playing the factory programs, the roles do change a little bit. But staying on top of those roles and playing the program for the long game. So what we did was, when the shortage started to get a little become very, very apparent, we made a conscious decision to still price our cars the same. Now, we did make record profits because it was much easier customers were much more amicable when the dealer down the street was selling above MSRP, whatever. If we were light on trades, they were just very, very amicable to deal with, but it drove traffic to the dealership. But then we kept our turn up. So where other dealers might have felt like they were turning cars because the average dealer was turning all their inventory over in 30 days, we were turning it in 8 days. So we keep earning cars, and now that the floodgates are open, we were the first people to have inventory when Chevy started opening up in our area. Now the challenge to that has been, and where we had to pivot and make the transition, is we had to figure out, okay, great, we got 230 cars on the lot. how can we continue to sell all of them in a 30-day period so that we keep the earn keeps coming to us instead of being filled up to somebody else. Right. So that's the game we've been playing. And since my people were based on volume, now we did supplement them. There was a couple months where we did a short term through spiffs and bonuses, paid them a little extra per car to get through COVID. So I had the opposite of what a lot of other people had, where my people actually had a period of time where it was actually hurting their pay, but we subsidized it to help them. But now they're just getting all excited. The opportunity's there, and it's really rocking. On the flip side, and I think Matt Lasco on your last show said this. We transitioned on used cars from carrying the typical 60-day supply to a 30-day supply of cars. Now, we actually increased our volume through doing that, but basically we track our 2-week rate of sale rate, and we make sure we're selling about 70% of our retail units within 2 weeks. So by transitioning to that, we may make a little less per car. Right. My area is in the middle of nowhere. You've been to the store, Dave. Yeah. So we have to make our pricing advantageous enough that people drive 2 hours to get here. But if we have a strong process in place to create a great experience, and we have a strong process in place to capture the back end, right. Even if I sat on that car for 40 days and could make $2,000 more on the front, if I'm making $3 to $4,000 on the back on every deal, I'm better off sacrificing that $2,000 up front and just going and just keep turning it. And then I also don't have to worry about the depreciation that a lot of other dealers. That was a real challenge, because then you're working with your reconditioning, your service departments to get everything in the lot in 3 to 5 days, so you can keep that right. turn up. Well, but then my morale is great, because we're bringing people. There are less buyers in the market, I think, this year because of affordability, as you talked about on your last podcast. Rates going up, prices staying up. Last year you could have got the same car for $100 less payment. So that either makes sales a little harder to achieve, right, or it will cut into your back end a little bit, because some people just have a budget. Right. But what we decided to do was to even go more aggressive on pricing and more aggressive on advertising, and just bring people in from further away. So our morale is great, because on a Saturday we may have our BDC between the two stores, we might have 80 to 100 appointments, and we're just trying to figure out how do we fit them all in our small little showrooms. But
that's a good problem to have. I want to get Grant in here, but that's a good problem to have, and
it is.
I want you to talk more about that in a second, Mike. Mikey, we had a lot of positive feedback, from what the guys talked about last week, and
that was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, ideas, not only connections, but sharing ideas, best practices. What's Auto Dealer Live's always been about. Yep. And Grant's been on the cusp of bringing that for years. And you know what, Grant, I don't think that today's going to be any different. So we'll let you touch in on that as well. What are you seeing? What are you doing with regards to the transition back to the car business, baby, right? Let's say it that way.
And this is cool too, because he's in a totally different market, right? So this is great to get that Tampa. Divergent perspective, right? Yeah, this is Tampa. This is our backyard.
But he's also the different make.
Yeah,
you have Chevy
absolutely.
and Chrysler, then you have Volkswagen. So, but absolutely.
I think, right. So, post-COVID was a time for many industries, ours included, that we will probably never, ever see again. It'll be studied as probably an economical, probably an economical unicorn, but it's not really reality. I think that if people really want to look at their businesses, they really have to be looking at their businesses in that 2018, 2019 mindset. And I really felt in those years, when I look back, that the auto business as a whole was vastly growing. You had gone from a place where you didn't have car guys solving a problem with technology and went and started a company. You had technology people solving problems for car guys. And you had a lot of lot of onus put back on the experience, a lot of onus put back on things. And then I think, we weren't shooting fish in a barrel. The fish was already filleted, cooked. You just had to pick what seasoning you wanted.
Yeah.
It was done. It was, never in the history of time were we able to determine the gross profit margin of a car deal. It wasn't, are we going to sell the car? It's how. And most importantly, for how much. And, as time goes on, I think that, we lost a lot of our strategy. I think things like BDC that had become the norm in the COVID area were starting to dissipate in that 19 era. All of a sudden, COVID happens. We lose our way. We're built on popsicle sticks, and we have to really, really go back in time to figure out, well, we really realized 5 years ago that this wasn't a sustainable endeavor. So why are we doing it? And I think the new added layer is artificial intelligence. The new added layer are all these things that help you, what stop the spillage, so to speak. But the reality is that it's pretty simple. We live in a now JG Wentworth marketplace. It's my money and I want it now. It's the reality of the American consumer. And guess what? I'm no different. When I want a new pair of shoes, when I want a steak, when I want this type of stuff, we're in a position in our economy and our realities where typically if we want something and we work hard, i.e. affordability, you can get it. And the wanting to wait for it is not going to happen. And I think that's what has really happened in the last, I would say, probably 5 to 6 months as people have gotten better, is we've really realized that people are really, really good car guys, but they're really, really bad business guys. And in this new marketplace, you really have to be a good businessman. And businessman, I'm not talking about P&Ls. I'm not talking about what's your profit, what's your loss, what's your gross, what's your net, are you controlling expenses, which are still higher level thinking. It's, what is my strategy, my exit strategy per car deal? What am I going to do the second that I say yes and put it into my inventory? What is my plan? How fast can I get that car through my shop? How fast can I get that car digitally present? And how fast can I turn that vehicle? And to Mike's point, if you're focusing on 90, 60, 45 day turn, you're just gonna take yourself out of the market. And secondarily, if you're not focusing on, typically, right, think about allocation, okay? Allocation was typically an administrative task of the weakest person on the desk. Think about that. It really was. I mean, it was really like, this guy should be closing more car deals, so I'm going to take the guy who doesn't close as many car deals, and I'm going to put him in charge of my inventory. Right. And that's really what it was. It was an administrative task because we found things for like-minded, likable people. Grant, he's okay. We really don't want to get rid of him. We just want him in front of less customers. So let's put him in charge of the inventory, or let's put him in charge of that. And then all of a sudden you turn around and you've got 35 white Civics on the lot, and you're thinking, well, what just happened? And I think that being able to control the manufacturer, and I think that truly allocation and turn and earn and talking to the manufacturer is now done on a much, much higher level. You've got to know what's on your lot. You've got to have stuff that people want. And frankly, how you combat that is having a great working relationship with your manufacturer, but also, why would you take something if you can't sell it? And I think that what hurts the other dealers who are not on top of the ball is they're accepting a bunch of cars that frankly they probably really don't need.
Yeah. And this is I think an interesting point too. You bring this up, you're talking about so those positions you mentioned, right? You want to keep the guy at the store back in the day. You put him in charge of inventory because you don't want him to be in front of customers as much. Part of the reason you were able to do that a little differently now, and how inventory is such a different focus, I think, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but technology has made it a lot more interesting when it comes to managing inventory, right? You're more able to do more than you used to be able to do with it, and then that's made it more valuable. And I think going back to something else you said earlier, we talk about, tech and speeding up the sales process. I think that's a big thing that always gets brought up is, people want to accelerate everything. But I think maybe talk for a second, and maybe we'll go back to you, Grant, and then go to Mike. But talk for a second about we talk about speeding up the sales process. We talk about all these different solutions and all this tech that's going to make that easier to do. But we always go back to the truth, which is, this is a people business. So I think two things. One, what do you think going forward into the near future? Technology, if we're going to speed up revenue generation, what are we going to do to improve things for our employees and for our customers? One, because I think that's a big part of it, right? If you're saving time, what are you going to do with that time? Because that's one of the transitions that happened during that time period where managing inventory and the tech that is involved to do that became more effective, and then that position became more valuable. We figured out, okay, let's find a better use for our time. But then another part of it is, how do we talk about keeping the people into it, into the business. And I mean, Dave, I know one of the things that's interesting to me is when I think about buying a car, myself personally, maybe it's different for everyone else, but when I think about buying a car, I don't want to just buy the car and walk away from it and not have, I want to connect with somebody I trust. Yeah. I think we all know that the industry, the people who say that they don't want that, I want to go to Carvana, I want to buy a car and just never talk to anybody. That's not really a reality for most people. You really want to know.
It's too big of a purchase. It's not. Yeah. It's too personal of a purchase. It's not a shirt. We talked about that, and I love this because you two, and the guests we try to have on the show, look, we don't have all the answers, but what we do is surround ourselves with people who think, and there's innovation, and really, you guys are. I love what you just said, Grant, and I do want to throw this back into you, both of your laps, and you guys can comment on this. You're right. The fish were filleted. You know what I mean? It was like, what seasoning do I want? Because it was, as John said it, I think on the episode prior, we were in the business of car sales, but now we're back in the business of selling cars. And, and the reality is, the dealers that are out there that are trying to make something happen, I think they're realizing that, hey, there's some incentives, there's things that we've been given again, but there's a lot of these dealers that are still out there going, hey, you know what? I'm going to hold on to this gross I made. I'm going to hold on to this. I want to try to keep it a little longer. And you know what? They're not shifting as fast back to the realization. Maybe one of you guys can touch on this. They're not shifting as fast back to the realization that, that I don't have the leverage that I had last year. And so what's going to happen to some of those dealers that might not, that don't shift back? I mean, are they going to wish they did 6 months from now? I mean, do one of you guys want to jump in on that?
I just think that they're going to not be existent. They won't exist. I mean, just the way that it is. I don't know. I'm a pretty kind-hearted, empathetic person, but the spotlight finds us all. It's kind of like trying to run out of jail, kind of like watching those old Superman movies where they're trying to break out. Eventually the spotlight's going to find you. And it's, how far away were you lucky enough to be the one who made it to the helicopter? Or you were unfortunate to be the one who the ladder was cut on? And I think that that's the reality. I mean, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I have very few answers. The one thing that I know is that this business will always be built on the relationships that you create. And I think that all the things that are added to it are great. I think there's a ton of smarter people than Grant Hocking out there that have great training programs, great things that they do. I applaud my colleague. I think that's so great that he's even willing to adapt and change his pay plan to an adapting thing. That shows forward thinking. I mean, I can remember my first pay plan, which a lot of it came, volume didn't exist. CSI bonuses didn't exist. There was two things. If you wanted to pay your bills, you made gross. And if you wanted to keep your job, you had good CSI. It's that simple. You got paid a percentage of the front end gross, and it was a requirement to come to work that get good CSI and treat customers well. But then somewhere along the way, we lost the customer experience and the customer journey in mind. So now we had to go back and either penalize and or bonus people to just provide the simple, hello, how are you? Do you like the car? It's really interesting to think about that. So I think that people who have lost the mindset that it's all about the customer, it's different. I was at a meeting yesterday, and it is still so crazy to me when people talk about millennials in a negative tone. And I was listening to this individual.
We're like 30 at this point.
Bro, I love millennials. It's the greatest thing that ever happened. The reason why we're still in business in so many different interests is because of millennials. They are people who care about the people that they do business with. They care about the company that they do business with, and they care about the experience they get. And no longer will they drive from Tampa to Sarasota to save $100. Like, this is the greatest generation of consumers that business people could ask for. Secondarily to that, it is the greatest generation of people you could want to work for you. Why do we not like them? Why? Because they're not motivated by something. They're not motivated by a dollar. They're not motivated by what? They're motivated by the experience they provide and the connection that they create. So why, when we're doing these trainings and process trainings and looking to the future, are we trying to take somebody's individual personality and stuff it back into a box and make them a cookie cutter version of what somebody says it's supposed to be?
But you know, part of it, I think, goes back to what you were saying just earlier, which is, hey, you have to have enough humility and enough open-mindedness to be able to look at it and say, I don't have all the answers, right? I mean, that's a big part of it, to be able to acknowledge that and say that brings creativity and new solutions and strategies. Yeah, in and of itself.
Absolutely. You know, Mike, we'll go to you. We have a few minutes left here. I want to throw this, automotive news. This is just stats, right? But I want to ask you about this because, there's some truth to this. Obviously, stats in a lot of cases, whether the stats are completely accurate or not, but there's typically a slant towards it. But I want to ask you on the ground level, Automotive News 2023 talks about the top dealership groups, right, in the U.S. I always want to know what those at the top are doing because that's an indication of what direction you should go. But the list says that 9 out of 10, the top groups so far right now in 2023 have a 1-to-1 new to used sold ratio, or they sell more used than new. And so inventory's coming back in, but we learned some things. So my question, I guess, is this the key to success? Is this, in your opinion, talk about that, and then talk about how that should be, in your opinion, drive you towards success, and why that's so. Why that 1-to-1 ratio right now in 2023 is a key.
Yeah, Dave, and I'll be glad to answer it with you. And then I'd like to jump back to something Grant was saying, if that's okay. Yeah. But the 1-to-1 is 100% important, and the reason it's important. When you run non-1-to-1, you're very unbalanced. You have to either dispose of your vehicles instead of retailing them that you should if you're running too high on the new. If you're running too high on the used cars, then you got to continue to replenish and buy vehicles. So right now, that's something I look at every day. Coming out of it. Last year on the Chrysler side, last quarter, Chrysler dealers started selling less cars because Chrysler kind of priced their cars out of the market, and now they're coming back into the market. And what we found was we had a thriving used car business, but we were buying. We had to buy a bunch of cars. Now we do it through street purchases, we do it through auctions, but nothing works better than a trade-in. So if I want to be cognizant of that number and keep pushing my new cars. Now that there's new cars on the lot, you can grow both. You can still buy cars, but I think the difference between what my counterpart over here said, he said about people going out of business, he's right. And I think one of the biggest falls for dealers is going to be the dealer that was too scared. We all know auction prices have been through the roof and acquiring cars have been through the roof. So some places just decided they weren't going to play in it, where the top 10 dealers, the top groups, are all buying cars. They're finding ways to do it, and then they're pricing their cars with strategies to turn them rather than hold on to them. And they're going out and being brave in a market that's a little scary. The ones that are being paralyzed by fear, are their business is just shrinking, and then they're trying to make up for it by raising their price, and depreciation's killing them. So I think it really comes out to being creative, whether that's a vehicle buying center, whether that's paying your reps to buy cars off the street, whether that if you have the right opt-ins. Grant was talking about technology. we are a people business, but we can use technology, whether that's a text messaging platform if you have the right opt-ins, or a voicemail opt-in, or even direct mail that looks personable, looks people, to do the initial outreach, so our people can focus on. I heard a stat the other day about a BDC rep should only have 175 leads, and I know BDC rep that have 400 some leads a month. But if you're using a technology platform that allows them to do that, you can do that, and you can do that on the purchase side as well. As well. But the ones that just got paralyzed by fear are falling to the wayside. But something Grant had said about and something that was said on your last podcast about getting back into the car business and millennials. I love the younger folks because we can train and we can teach them something. If I was to take over a store today that maybe didn't do what we did and weren't aggressive through the shortage, and their people don't remember how to sell cars and can't close, I might restructure the whole thing. And what I mean by that is I would take my top salespeople, my top closer, but the one that can't be a good manager because of they're worried he can't handle the inventory or the organization, but he's a revenue driver, and put 5 salespeople, pay those salespeople differently. They can be new, fresh from Walmart or retail type business or restaurant business, and they're product specialists, and all they do is show the car and have that closer get involved early, guide them to what car to show. But then that guy can sell 100 cars. You can scale it, so you don't need to get everybody up to speed on how to close again and how to sell again. You really only need 5 people, and then you take those 5 people times 5, right? 5 helpers. I just think that's a solution for a lot of dealers now that might have.
That's good. That's good, gentlemen. We're out of time here, but Grant, I do want to give you. Take 45 seconds, man. You can, I know that's going to be very difficult, but 45 seconds or so just to say, maybe touch on what Mike just said, or to leave really just a closing statement of some sort of like advice moving forward to dealers. If you can have 45 seconds and just speak to dealers that are out there, what would you say?
Just say, enjoy the moment. And that's it. It's the moment, enjoy it, embrace it, have fun. The amount of platforms available to us to be able to impact the people around us, not only who work for us, not only who do business with us, but our communities is great. The car business is one of those last frontiers of a community support. I love the fact that we can still support baseball teams, that we can still do the grassroots things that have made our country so great. So don't lose sight of the fact of the power that comes with and the ability to impact society for the better by simply being a car dealer. A car dealer is a very necessary and important part of our economy. Take pride in that fact. Don't hold your head down and hold your head up and find out more things you can do for other people. Because the more you can do for other people, you'll find that all your stuff will be taken care of.
It's good. Awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, that's really good. What about you, Mike? Want to give us some closing thoughts? I know you had a lot there just a few minutes ago, but here's something I wanted to ask you, just to give that little 45-second wrap up. What's one thing, if you had to say one thing, that you think dealers need to do right now to ensure that they set themselves up for success with what's going on in this market? Which I know, Grant, you touched on, but Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I gave you my one thing a second ago when I said about making that store.
One more.
Give me 3. I'm going to give you a second one. It goes back to actually what Grant was saying earlier in the podcast about inventory management. What I would do is the guy that does the marketing for the dealership, the guy that's responsible for the marketing of the dealership, should be the guy or gal potentially that's either handling the inventory or is heavily involved in the inventory. Because when I order a car, whether it's new or I take in a used car, I should already have that exit strategy in mind. I should already know, okay, this is a price leader car. We're going to do some crazy price online. We're going to attach and add to it. We're going to get a bunch of first party leads on it. People are going to come in from hours away on this car because it's a good looking truck at a great price. This car, we're not going to advertise. This is going to be the $3,000 bump car for people that want more equipment. I should have that all planned out as I'm planning my inventory, so we can keep things. Right now, the dealer's going to win that can turn their inventory the fastest and keep earning inventory. So, and have the right mix on the lot.
Awesome stuff, man. Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you guys have an incredible rest of the month. And thank you so much for the insight. I am positive that dealers that listen to this are going to take a page full of notes. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great day. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page.
And click on that bell so you get notified for every new episode.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, until next time, I'm David.
I'm Mikey.
This is Auto Dealer Live.